All right. Hello and welcome back to the Dish It Dirty podcast. Today's episode is with someone who has built a brilliant career through grit, commercial instinct, and proving that transferable skills matter. My guest today is Ali Sharp. Ali's journey is a really interesting one because he did not start in the cleaning and hygiene world. He came from a trading and commodities background. I call him the Wolf of Peterborough. Working in fast-paced environments where margins, markets, negotiation, and decision-making mattered every single day. He then made his move into the cleaning and hygiene sector and has never looked back. Since then, he's held senior roles with Kimberly-Clark Professional and WEPA Professional, building a strong reputation as one of the best up-and-coming commercial sales leaders in this industry. One of the big reasons I wanted to get him on today is to show what he achieved at WEPA Professional, where he helped grow the UK and Ireland business from almost nothing to around £8 million in just 3 years, which is serious growth in any market. So today we're going to talk about how he helped WEPA grow so quickly, leadership lessons from managing teams and driving performance, what separates average salespeople from top performers, how he sees the cleaning and hygiene market, and most importantly, why someone with his track record is now open to potential new opportunities. So if you're looking for a new sales leader or commercial leader, this guy is your man. He is back on the market. He is single, ladies. So if you're a company in the cleaning, hygiene, packaging, facilities world looking for a professional commercial leader, this is the man for you. And this is the Dish the Dirty podcast. Let's get into it. Good to see you, Al.
Thanks, mate. That was quite the introduction. Just what I needed to blow the tyres up before we start. So that's spot on. I can't complain about those sorts of things.
Yeah, man. Oh,
thanks, mate. Much appreciated on this lovely sunny day. So thank you.
It's good to have you here. And it's you've got an interesting background. You've achieved such great things already in this industry. And I just thought, getting you on here and having a good conversation would be a great chance to explore some of that, So
yeah, no problems, mate.
I guess what we're interested in, we've spoken about it before, but the Wolf of Peterborough trading background, and that was a long time ago, but tell us about that and some of the skills that you brought into, how that helped you for the rest of your career.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So, that kind of all fell about. I fell into it, to be honest. When I left university, I went straight to Australia, and I played some cricket over there for best part of a year. Came back, and we were right in the middle, or towards the middle end of the 2008-2009 financial crisis. So as you can imagine, I'd argue that might even be slightly worse than what we're in now, but it's definitely very similar. So came back from Australia, I had barely £1 in my bank account, so I was like, I need a job. So I got a job at a local or local-ish agricultural merchants, and started working in their reception team. I was only 21, I think, at the time. And that kind of then developed from receptionist to their trading floor. And then on their trading floor, I worked as an analyst. So one of the things you do there within the futures commodities market is you're analysing. So we sold and traded all of the grain, barley, pulses, oilseed rape, all of the agricultural produce, that's grown and harvested right around where I live. So basically doing that for 3 years, and then I did a maternity cover as well for another 6 months with a company in Cambridge, which a larger company, which led to working more in London and understanding more the trading floor, as it were. But futures commodities is a really good grounding because it gives you the experience to learn all about the markets themselves. And I think the biggest thing that I'd recommend anybody to do is to just spend 10 minutes a week, 15 minutes a week, read the FT. I still read the FT now for sort of 20 minutes a week just to sort of see what's going on. I'd really strongly recommend anyone in sort of a commercial or commercial facing role to do that. It gives you a little information is not a bad thing. Don't try and read too much and go down a rabbit hole, but getting a little bit of information can certainly help. And I think one of the things that, from my perspective, and also similar people like myself, it just gives you that basic understanding of why things happen. So a price might move X, supply and demand equals Y, etc. We've see it currently with the Middle East crisis, and people might wonder why our fuel is so expensive, or our ability to source certain goods in this country is more difficult because of what's going on and stuff. And you just need to just read and learn. And I think, yeah, like I said, I'd recommend anyone doing that. Um, but yeah, that's I did that for crikey 4 years, and yeah, it gave me a really strong grounding, really. And I think you can apply so much of that type of thing, and the external market factors. You can apply so much of that to your everyday life, because it helps you understand why certain things might be happening. But also from a professional perspective, it gives you, when you are then looking at charts and data and various other things, you've got that probably slight advantage that you might understand it a bit better. So yeah, definitely something that I would recommend anyone doing. And yeah, like I said, it's something that can only benefit, in my opinion.
Did you, I know you didn't throw any midgets at dartboards when you were working in
Nothing
London.
like that. Unfortunately not. Unfortunately not, no.
But did you see any wildness, any interesting experiences when you were there?
Yeah, I mean, derivatives and equities, equities and derivatives, should I say, is completely different. That's like stocks and shares, FTSE 100, all that. That's a different world altogether. So the Wolf of Wall Street sort of depiction of things was not what we were in at all. We're futures commodities, so we were trading. Obviously live produce, physical produce, to fulfill contracts that we had with customers. So like Weetabix or Hellmann's. So the Hellmann's with mayonnaise, and mayonnaise also with rape, and Weetabix is obviously wheat for the Weetabix. So we were fulfilling agricultural contracts in that perspective. So ours is a lot slower paced, but it was truly global, because obviously the wheat market, for example, what happens in South America or what happens in Russia would have an impact on what happens in Europe, and what happens in Europe obviously then affects us over here. So it wasn't anything wild like you see on TV, but it was certainly something that when you can join the dots together, like X happened over here and that led to Y and led to Z. I think that's why it gives you, like I said earlier, it gives you a good understanding of potentially why things could or are happening. So
Mm.
yeah, definitely something like I said, definitely something I'd recommend people just spending 10-15 minutes a week just to have a look at things, what's going on in the
Yeah,
markets.
nice. And then something you fell into, and then I imagine you fell into again, like everyone does in the cleaning and hygiene industry.
Yeah.
Fell into that as well, at KC as well, one of the
Hmm.
biggest players, and spent a few years there in sales, didn't you? Some very sort of key account roles and such, working
Hmm.
for
Hmm.
them, and then went out of the market, and then came back to WEPA, didn't you?
Hmm.
And then
Hmm.
WEPA, because
Hmm.
you joined was it 2019?
2020. So
2020.
just not long into COVID, only the June. So COVID was what, March, I think, February,
Yeah.
March, when it all kicked off. So it was
Oh,
just
wow.
a few months after into COVID. So
Yeah, and WEPA, for any who don't know who the business is, but probably these days know them quite a bit more. Obviously, a
mm,
paper hygiene manufacturer, you know,
mm.
based in, is it Dusseldorf? Is that the head office, or the?
Yeah, well, just outside, so Arnsberg,
Yeah,
Muschede, which is
sure.
between the other side of Dortmund. It's probably the best way to put it. So
Huge business though, right? Absolutely massive
yeah,
business. And
yeah.
then when you came on board, it was really the genesis of the business in the UK,
Mm-hmm.
right? Right
Yeah,
at the very
definitely. Yeah,
beginning.
yeah,
And were you the only person in the UK at the beginning? Was that how it
yeah.
started? Yeah.
Yeah. So that's basically what the role was. So I was working in a different industry, in the baby and juvenile industry, and then was approached to take on the role at VEPA. So it was to basically head of sales for the UK and Ireland. So to set up the business, they had some initial business when I first joined. So a couple of customers and a relatively small turnover, and it was essentially about building the business. So it was not quite a greenfield project, but for all intents and purposes, it probably was. So it was, it was the whole start point. So you had to,
Mhm.
build the logistics, the supply chain, the contacts, the warehousing, the customer base, the MPD, marketing, everything. And yeah, it was a chaotic first sort of 18 months, 2 years, to just chasing your tail every day to try and build something. So it was the biggest challenge. The challenges are obvious. There was, I think, one of the things that was particularly obvious was, and that came apparent quite early on, was if you think about that time of in history, there was COVID going on, but also we were coming through the sort of secondary stages of Brexit around that time. So from a British distributor perspective, there was a greater focus on, well, there was a feeling, should I say, that there was a greater focus on product wanting to be sourced from the UK or being produced in the UK. So that was something that was, yeah, we kind of took that head on as quickly as possible and realised that not just commercially, but just also from a cultural perspective, there was a desire that product should be sourced more locally rather than dragging it across Europe. So there was that element to deal with, and also the cost element of bringing stuff across from our factories in Eastern Europe or Central Europe, which had significant cost implications, as you could imagine, even more so during that time of year, just COVID, and then obviously then we had the Ukraine war, and then obviously we had the energy crisis. So it's been kind of like one significant event after the other throughout my tenure. Really, we only had a period of stability sort of post the Ukraine war, energy crisis, and leading into this latest one we've had in the Middle East. We had that sort of period in between where there was a bit more market stability, but I'd say, realistically speaking, it's always had its challenges, and still today, it's a challenging marketplace for sure. Probably arguably the most challenging I've known it in 10 years or so.
That's saying something as well. Saying something. And
Mm.
obviously coming in with that particular product, very extremely competitive environment. Lots of players
Absolutely.
within it too, right? But growing it from almost nothing to 8 million in 3 years, that's during, like you say, COVID, Ukraine, and everything else is quite astounding. What was, if you were to do it again, what would be the steps that you would take?
Yeah, I think I'd do it. To be honest with you, it was the first sort of 18 months. I didn't really know any better. I kind of just stuck a logical head on and thought, well, you've got to build the foundations before you can build the house. So it was kind of, well, what do we need fundamentally to be able to operate? And then once we've got the fundamentals or the foundations in place, you can start adding the shiny and impressive stuff on the top, can't you? So it was, to start with, it was, and I do it the same way. Again, it was obviously looking at a warehousing and logistics partner over here, because, like I touched on, not everyone was happy with direct supply straight from Europe. So we had to look at some UK-based supply as well. So working with WEPA UK, who are our sister company on the consumer side of our business, worked very closely with them for the first, throughout my tenure, to be honest, to build a partnership there. And we had some joint warehousing that we used. We used their logistics, and then building on from that was things like adding customer service people in. So we hired customer service people that worked then in conjunction with our consumer business. So we found a way to sort of split those assets across both parts of the business, which was more cost effective, but secondly also led to those synergies where we could rely on them very heavily in the initial sort of period because we were building. So that was really, really good. And then the critical part then in terms of brand awareness, and what kind of led to probably the majority of our success, was the marketing. So we didn't bring anything in-house. We looked at multiple different options, whether it was bringing someone in or working with subcontractors or looking at stuff externally. And we settled on an agency relatively local to where the offices are on the consumer side of the business, a company called Rumpus. So a big shout out to those guys. They still work with us now. They're really, really good. And Paul there and his team were nothing but helpful during my time. They were superb. And what they did, which I found particularly helpful, was they were quite happy to immerse themselves in our business, to understand our business and take the time to understand it. So when they then did anything on our behalf, it was almost as though they were working for WEPA. So that made life a lot easier, and B, any sort of transition or communication, etc., was just far better. The partnership we had with those guys, especially in the formative years, was incredibly important. One of the things, two or three of the things they did in particular was the relationships they had with the trade. So the trade press, whether it's digital, whether it's still old fashioned, because still. I'd still say our industry was predominantly more, well, not necessarily predominantly, but there's still a significant part of our industry that's probably old fashioned in compared to some of the more modern industries we see around us. So people still like things like magazines, and they still like the trade press, and they still read it, etc. So um, yeah, the work of Rumpus and ourselves to really, yeah, build collaborations and partnerships in that respect massively helped us. And then I'd say that the two sort of major events we had were things like the cleaning show. So we did the London cleaning show, for example, in 21, and that was our first sort of big showcase who we are, what we do. First time sort of on UK soil with a big stand and what have you. And yeah, bright pink because of the Satino colours. Obviously, pink is the key colour. And it was just really eye-catching, and the amount of I can't remember off the top of my head, but the number of leads and conversations and yeah, I guess developments that kind of occurred on the back of that show was staggering. I mean, now, I mean, there's still be customers now that we brought on in 2021 who would now be nearly 5 down, no, 5 years down the line, sorry, who would be significant customers for WEPA now, i.e. they've been an established distributor over a period of time. Their business has grown from zero to well into the six figures in some of their cases. And it's also allowed the ability for us to penetrate into certain markets in the UK, which I think without the things we spoke about, whether it's the joint ventures with WEPA UK, it's the work of Rumpus, it's the work at the cleaning shows, I don't think a lot of those things would have necessarily happened without without formalizing those really strong business relationships at in the early stages. They were it's it's an exciting but scary thing when you enter a market for the first time. There's obviously a lot of hope and expectation, but the reality is there's also a lot of incredibly hard work and grit and determination, and it's a fine balance between optimism and stupidity. I think sometimes you've got to it would be easy just to carry it away and say, I've got to sell to everyone and do everything, but that isn't really the WEPA way of doing things. So it was so yeah, really proud time, to be honest. And I think from my perspective, just the sheer learning experience from that, from building, primarily building that business and all of the non-sales functions. So obviously sales is where I'm based and my background is, and I've got that understanding there, but getting a greater understanding on things like warehousing, logistics, marketing, etc., customer services, and all of the processes and various things that those different departments go through. I think it brings you out a heck of a lot more rounded than when you first go in. And I think that it actually, when you're looking at the business in sort of a totalitarian perspective, you look at it and you think, well, actually, sales is a function. Of course it is, and it's kind of like the tip of the spear, but without all the rest of it, and without really strong functions and processes and systems between, so they all interlink, etc., and a mutual collaboration really across all the departments, you're never gonna succeed. So yeah, it was a very interesting time for sure.
It's as close as you can get to building your own business, really, isn't it?
I think so. Yeah. I think so. Yeah. I think you understand. Yeah, and I think it's things like the big thing for me is, like, I'm a big believer in data and the importance of data, and also constant sort of continuous improvement and Kaizen and all these things. These are all kind of buzzwords, I know, but I think personally speaking, they're incredibly important, and there's lots of different ways to skin a cat. You can make money by, yes, you can sell products. Of course, you can generate turnover through selling products, but you can also generate improvements on your bottom line by things like efficiencies in different ways. So whether it's improved processes or it's looking at I don't know, MPD or whichever sort of facet of business you look at, there's lots of different ways that you can generate capital or save capital. And I think that's something that whole experience, kind of was a really good grounding in that, for sure.
On the Kaizen side of things, did you learn that on the fly? or did you know a lot of that beforehand?
So I did a lot
Maybe
of
just
that. So
explaining what that is briefly as well.
yeah, so that's kind of like, it's obviously it's a terminology used for continuous improvement, basically, and always looking for the most efficient and yeah, sustainable ways to generate improved cash flows or improved workflows, whatever it may be. But for me personally, this is all going back to my university days. I remember it was part of a university module, and I think it's something that I personally believe really strongly in data and the importance of it. And actually, if you spend the time to look into your data, it gives you patterns and trends, and it tells you things that you might not necessarily have seen. And I'm not one for assumptions or gut feeling. I think the old phrase assume makes an ass out of you and me.
Mm,
In my opinion, I think that couldn't be a truer statement. So I would also always prefer data and facts
mm,
over assumptions. And I think where you then, like we talk about the SIP and continuous improvement, you can't do that without decent, good quality data. You just can't do it. It just physically wouldn't work. So I
mm,
think there's two major points there where if you're focusing on continuous improvement, I think you'll generate improved commercial numbers by looking at that. I think something that a lot of businesses maybe don't have the time to do it. I think it's something that people like to maybe talk about, but someone or a team or a department has actually got to spend quite a chunk of time really deep diving into what that looks like and how they can actually make some noticeable changes from doing it. And then on the flip side, it's processes as well. And I think that's something else that I personally enjoy doing. And I think uh, I think with processes and systems, it's again something that you've got to have the right mindset, or someone that's interested in. You feel like a little bit like a detective in some ways. You've got an issue, a problem might be X, Y, or Z, and you don't know what it is, but you think it's to do with whatever it may be. It then takes an individual to spend that time on that data to drill down into it, and then hopefully on the back of that, you're able to look at some SIP practices that generate meaningful returns. But I think with sales in particular, it's probably something that, generally speaking, as a industry, we're focused on selling outwards, aren't we? We're more focused on selling to the end user or customer, whatever, and maybe the internal processes we maybe, I don't know, maybe we focus slightly less on. I'm not sure.
mm, mm. And when you're faced with the challenge of you're a new player in the market
Uh,
who's, you know, uh, in a very competitive market, one of the most
uh,
competitive, definitely in the cleaning and
uh,
hygiene industry, right?
uh,
Paper's going to be up there as the
uh-huh,
most
uh-huh,
competitive, I imagine.
uh-huh.
Brand that no one knows anything about, and
Yeah.
you're coming into that from practically a standing start.
Mm.
How are you getting that traction with those distribution partners? And how are you
Yeah.
breaking in with those guys? Because in
Mm,
the end,
mm.
didn't you end up with, how many was it you ended up with?
Nearly 30, so like
Nearly 30,
27,
right?
28. Yeah.
27,
Yeah. So
28. So how do you do?
yes, there's kind of three things I'd break it down to. I think firstly is your story. The second is your USP. You need a point of difference. You need a point of difference compared to the competition. And thirdly, for me, it would boil down to, we've talked about point of difference, but also your trading terms and how you operate. I think you also have to position yourself slightly differently. So I can touch on that one first and go back to the other two. So as an example, what we looked at WEPA was something that I think is important. Was most suppliers, manufacturers will sell to most distributors as long as you meet a certain criteria, whether it's turnover, whether it's whatever your credit history checks out, etc. Most people are quite happy to sell to everyone. Now, the problem you've got with that example is end users are then have multiple places they can buy the same product from. Now, in most cases, or in some cases, should I say, that could be in a local area. And then what you end up with is a horrible situation where you've got two local distributors and one end user. And the end user, for example, might want to buy from distributor X, but he's buying from distributor Y. And it just becomes a bun fight. And it's essentially down to who's willing to drop their margin the lowest. And then you've got a lot of other things as you can imagine, from a commercially sensitive perspective, are their payment terms the same? Are their pricing the same? Et cetera, et cetera. And it does open a big can of worms when you've got, as an example, two distributors in a close proximity, and then the end user has the option to buy from whoever they want. So one of the things I introduced when I started, and it was there's no two ways about it. It's a slower growth trajectory than just fire out to everyone. I introduced a 30-mile radius to all of our new potential distributors. So it was sold as a selling point, to be honest with you. And speaking to distributors, I said, well, look, if this is after sort of this first phase of due diligence, so we'd had our initial discussion. Distributor felt like a good option for us, and we felt like a good option to them. You then delve into sort of the next layer of detail, and that was all around offering this like 30-mile radius for that small independent distributor or independent distributor, where we wouldn't bring in another distributor within that 30-mile radius. Now the caveat on that is obviously we can't do that on national. So we're quite open and say, look, if there's a national distributor selling in your region, there's nothing I can do. That is the nature of the beast. They're national. It is what it is. But we won't proactively pursue another SME, for example, within your locality, which gave them a sense of, it's not giving them an exclusive, of course it's not, but it gives them a sense of sort of security in their area that they can go out to X, Y, and Z end users and not have someone else on their doorstep trying to sell into that end user as well. So that's one of the point of differences we focused on. The second was, generally speaking, the majority of products that WEPA produce, we've changed some of the product blends over the course of the last few months, but generally speaking, and going back to 2020 and in the early years, WEPA produced EU specification products. So as an example, grammage on hand towels would have been higher than UK specification. The thickness, obviously the quality, the plushness, etc., was generally speaking better than what you would get on the standard UK market. So again, that was your point of difference. WEPA's two key stances are obviously sustainability is absolutely gigantic for them, and also as the number one recycled manufacturer in Europe. So again, it was a point of difference to really focus on recycling. Obviously, KC have a strong recycling focus, but someone like Metzer, for example, focuses more on their pulp side of things. So again, it's looking at trying to position ourselves in a certain way and having a strong story that backs up what we're saying. I think that's the key. Story is also really important. You've got to have, like I said, a point of difference with your story. As you know, there's a lot of copying and mimicking goes on in our industry, as we know. And I think that there's a place for that to an extent, but realistically speaking, you need to be offering people something, innovative or unique that they haven't seen or done before to stand a real chance of trying to drive some meaningful growth with them. And then I think the last point on that would be kind of, without giving away too much, but from a commercial perspective, just being realistic in what we want to achieve and realistic in how we can achieve that. And what I mean by that is we weren't setting the bar really, really high to try and bleed the market dry. It was more a case of let's go in at a reasonable level and see what we can penetrate in the early days. Because of course it was a new venture, obviously significant cost implications of moving into a new market. So we wanted A, to do it sustainably, but B, we wanted to do it that it was, how do I put this? Yeah, it was sustainable, but it kind of left a legacy that what we did in the early years could be the foundations for them what's come after. And I don't need to explain what's come after with things like the acquisition of Star and stuff like that. And I think if the work I did in the formative years played a part in that, then it's something I'm very proud of. And I think also maybe without that work, we possibly weren't in a position to necessarily do what has then occurred in the most recent history.
And one of the things that we spoke about quite a long time ago, which we like, and you've touched upon it, one of the P's there is that your three P's that you look at. Looking at a business or a team, and you're going in there and trying to figure out what those problems are. You put it down, sure. You look at those three P's. So just explain what those three P's are.
Yeah, fine. It's just something that I personally use, and I find it, within a leadership perspective, but also within a commercial perspective, it's something that I've kind of done for the last ever since I've worked really, and it's the three P's. So it's people, processes, and product. And what I try and do is, if there's ever an issue or a problem or whatever you want to call it, then I try and work out which of those three elements the problem or could fall into. Because I think once you can identify it in those ways, and really, and the key element is not to just look at it on a surface level. You've got to drill down into the real sort of origin of where of what the problem is and where it's come from, and then you can understand as to what type of problem it is. And then I find that makes it easier for me personally to then go and understand who I need to speak to, how I need to get it sorted out. I can give you a quick example. A good example would be if you had a sales representative and they sold a product to an end user and the price was incorrect. So, for example, the business felt internally that the price was too sharp, too sensitive. It's completely wrong. We're going to lose margin on it, blah, blah, blah. It's very easy to probably take an overview of that and go, well, that's a people problem. That's the individual's fault. That's a really simplified way of going, well, that's a person problem. Well, I'd actually look at it slightly differently. I go, okay, well, that could be a person problem. Like if the person is just completely disengaged, alienated, and they want to do the business harm, then yeah, fair enough. You could argue it most likely is. I would argue the majority of people aren't going to behave like that. So it's probably not a people problem. So you have to then you have to just take a deeper dive down into it and think, okay, so are there the correct processes in place for that individual to go through a workflow before they give a price to the end user, as an example? Have they got the reporting tools or the data that they can look at and go, well, what's the market price for that sector that we sell product to? So what's I don't know, as an example, what's the price of hand towels going into education, 2-ply, 3,000 sheet hand towels? Oh, okay, fine. Well, I could just quickly dig up that report, have a quick look, and it'll tell me these are all the products we sell and the average price that we sell, the median price, whatever. Okay, fine. So if I pitch my price somewhere in that region, I'm not going to have any fallout or ramifications because I've put a price in that's conducive to other customers of either the same volume or within the same market. Now, all of that is a process. You've got to have the reporting system set up. You've got to have a workflow that says before you set up a price, go through this, do your due diligence, check this, check that, send it to customer services, blah, 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 done. So I would argue in the example I gave at the start where the individual gave the wrong price, like I said, unless they've done something malicious, which is hopefully highly unlikely, the reality is it's probably a process problem because they maybe haven't been taught that they need to go through these various workflow stages before they give a price. Now, that's completely understandable, and some would argue, oh, that seems a really long-winded way of giving someone a price. But if it mitigates the risk at the end, i.e. it means that end user isn't disgruntled, or that end user doesn't pull the business from you, or that end user doesn't talk to his other colleagues or his other competitors or friends or business owners, whatever, and then leads to further ramifications down the line. I think that's the other thing I would say on that topic is our business is quite insular. Everyone tends to speak to most people. People speak to people in our industry. It's one of the nice things about it. I think you can still, if you sell to X end user X, they probably speak to end user Y. So if you're doing anything that's not, maybe slightly underhand's the wrong word, but if you're doing anything that's slightly off the cuff and what have you, maybe not been planned properly, there are potential ramifications for you. So yeah, that's just an example of how I would do something. And I think it's important. Attention to detail is my kind of absolute biggest buzzword. I would say if you want someone to make a decision, and most of the time your salespeople want you to make a decision, either to support them with a decision or make a final decision. And I always say historically to my guys, I need the detail from you. So attention to detail. Give me all the data. Even if you think it's too much, give it all to me. And then I've got much more stronger basis to make a decision from. And then in most recent history, the development of AI, like I'm a big believer in AI. I think it's going to enhance significant amounts of everyday life alongside significant amounts of commercial and business commerce in this country. I think it's a really positive thing. There are some negatives, of course, but generally speaking, I'd see it as positive. But if you ask anybody, or the majority of people nowadays, what do they think of AI? I would argue most people will turn around and give you a fairly positive response. Yeah, I use ChatGPT and it helped me with X, or I use this and it helped me with Y, or Copilot helped me do this report, blah, 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 blah. Most people would give you a positive report. But what's the one critical thing that AI relies on? It's data. And it's that attention to detail from you as the inputter of that data into the AI tool that allows it to come out with the results that allow you your enhancements in your day-to-day or your business or whatever. So if you don't spend the time and the attention to detail in inputting the data correctly into AI, you'll get a false result. And the false result could then lead you to all sorts of potential ramifications. So I kind of bracket it all up in that type of explanation. If anyone asks me, well, why is attention to detail so important? I say to them, well, what do you think of AI? And then kind of explain it in that perspective. And if you compare it as well to, say, a car, AI and a car are quite similar. With a car needs fuel to run, AI needs data to run. You put the wrong fuel in a car, it doesn't run. You put the wrong fuel in AI, or the wrong data into AI, should I say, you're going to get an incorrect result. So they're very much intrinsically linked. And I think, for me personally, the 3 Ps, attention to detail, and the importance of data are where I focus a lot of my attention and where I focus a lot of my thought processes to try and improve and enhance decision making, but then also mitigate my risk to that decision making, or of that decision making, should I say?
Yeah, the AI. I love your AI example there, because it is crap in, crap out at the end of the day.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is definitely.
But it is fascinating because I've been guilty of it. I'm guilty of it probably every single day with it. But if you don't do that data work up front, you assume what you're giving it is good data, right? And then you're going to go down that rabbit hole or that path that could be hugely destructive. And you create for yourself, it gives you a false sense of what could be true or right, doesn't it?
The best validator of what you've just said, 100%, 100% agree with you. And the best validator of what you've just said is, what does ChatGPT do once it's given you your script or your prompt? What's it say at the bottom? It asks you another question. So it asks you for more data. It asks you for more detail. It asks you for more data so that it can please you in some way of them giving you the best response it can do. So it's like it's almost like screaming at you, give me more, give me more, give me more. And I think
but at the moment it doesn't use its brain to say you're wrong. That's where it isn't good. I can't remember which AI it is. It might be, I don't know. It might be Grok. I can't remember which one it is. But one of them it might be Claude. One of them is being trained to push back.
Being
like, no, this is wrong. This is objectively wrong. This is why it's wrong, rather than just trying to please you, I think, with it.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I think it's something that I think you've got to be confident when you use AI, in my opinion. You've got to understand what your objective is from using the software. So if your objective is to get an answer on a topic you don't know anything about, then take the data that it's given you, but then also do your own research, because it might not, like you said, it might not be 100% accurate. There might be some faults. You might have put the wrong initial data in, whatever, but you've got to, I think my advice would be, don't be scared of it. Absolutely not. But use it as a tool, like dip your toe in the water to start with if you're unsure, and just ask it some basic things. So I don't know, as an example, chuck your top 10 most purchased home goods, your shopping goods, I don't know, your milk, your bread, whatever, chuck it into ChatGPT and ask it, where can I buy these 10 items for that's the cheapest possible place near me? And it might give you some data that saves you a couple of quid on your shopping. I don't know, but it's dipping your toe into things, and like I say, taking the data with a slight pinch of salt, because there are obviously, like you said, there's not a huge amount of ability to sort of not contradict, but challenge what you're saying.
You could say to it, the sky is red, and it goes, well done, you're absolutely correct.
Exactly.
You're so handsome. Plus, you're really funny. And yes, the sky is red. And you're like,
exactly.
Thanks.
Yeah, exactly.
It's kind of it's there to please you rather than be.
It is. But I think what's changing a lot in the world is like Copilot in conjunction with, say, Power BI, for example. So we have Power BI as our financial reporting system, and then I use, as an example, more Copilot now to help me with my basic formulations and things like that. Not because I can't be bothered to do it myself. It's just typing a couple of lines of of sentences or code or whatever, and it will just do it for me. It's just quicker. It's just
Mm.
saving time. It's yeah, it just all at the end of the day, if you can get your prompts right and accurate, you're going to save yourself time, which
Yeah.
most people would like to buy more time back, wouldn't they? In every walk of life. So
You got to be careful with it because it can cost you time though. I mean, with
yeah,
I had an example a couple of a week or so ago with we had people interviewing for roles to do a presentation, right? And one of the candidates in there basically relied heavily on AI for the presentation.
yeah, yeah.
And that's all well and good until you
Mm.
start being asked,
Yeah,
why do you
yeah,
think this way? Or like,
yeah,
how
exactly,
have you come
exactly.
to this answer or that answer? And
Mm.
he was completely stuck on it.
Yeah, you've got to use it to support your views, not create
Support.
your views.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You have,
yeah,
because
yeah, yeah.
if you can't discern
You're
what it's
knackered
saying,
otherwise. Yeah,
or you're screwed, right?
exactly,
That's where
exactly.
he was at. Another big problem with it that I don't think it's talked about that much is also the training data that it has, which is
Mm.
basically the whole internet, does not mean that that is correct. Like
No, it's
in
not always
an example
validated,
of
is
that,
it?
no,
Yeah.
it's not validated. And an example of that, and I bang on anyone who listens to anything or reads anything I do is probably sick about it, is job adverts, right? That go out there. Obviously,
Mm,
you're on the market and you see job adverts at the moment.
mm,
What do you notice? They're
mm,
all shite, right? They're all
mm,
horrible.
mm.
They're rubbish. At
And
this point,
repetitive as well.
repetitive and crap and whatnot.
Mm,
99% of those adverts these days are written because someone's just put prompts into AI and created it. Create us a good advert, right? The problem is that the data sets that the AI has is just years and years of other crap
mm,
adverts.
mm.
So it doesn't know what good is. All it's got is
Yeah.
crap data. It's back to what we
Mm,
said earlier. It's crap in, crap out.
mm,
Apart from
mm,
in this scenario, it's years of crap data,
mm,
right?
mm,
And that creates its own problems again. Again, people, it's never been told, or maybe there's one person on the internet who's got it right, but
mm,
it's not going to take that one person who got it right. It's going to create the consensus. It's going to take the consensus of what everybody else is doing from the bad advice that's out there. And
mm.
that's why they're so crap.
Yeah,
That's
I'd
why they're
agree.
so crap. So the data it
It's
gets is
having it's confidence, isn't it? If you're using it for something you're confident it's gonna help you with, then that's the most important thing. I think you touched on a really salient point where you don't want to use it for something that is gonna promote a false picture of yourself.
yeah, you got
Like
to be,
that is where
yeah,
you're gonna get yourself into serious bother.
yeah,
Like there's a like I can imagine that, well, I don't need to imagine, I know plenty of people who use it for their communication via email and stuff like that. And if you're
mm,
not using that terminology or language in your usual mannerisms and way you talk or
mm,
speak or whatever, it's gonna stand out like a sore thumb that you've sent an email in a certain tone or whatever
of
that
course it is.
doesn't look anything like you.
Of
And
course
then
it is.
you
Yeah.
just fall foul of it when real life hits and you actually have to engage with.
Explain what you're saying, or yeah, totally.
Exactly.
With
Yeah.
I've tried to find the
Mm.
balance with it, and I think I found a relatively decent balance with it. It's good. I do a lot
Mm.
of writing for my job
Yeah,
at
I'm the same as you.
university, and
Yeah, yeah.
do a lot of content and stuff like that. Especially for content on LinkedIn, like for marketing purposes, you need to have an authentic voice, even if
Yeah,
people
you
don't
do.
like that voice. um,
Yeah,
but
definitely.
I, at the beginning, I relied on it too heavily, and I had no voice in there. Now I'll always write whatever I'm writing. I'll write it because I think you have to build that muscle of what good
Totally
writing,
agree.
bad writing is. You need to know what it is in the first sense, and
Totally
then you
agree.
can use it afterwards to, you know, have that little cherry on the top, or maybe change the grammar or
Yeah.
whatever you might do. But you have to be able to authentically have created that piece in the first place
Yeah, I'm
and
not
put
a
it
big
out.
fan of necessarily using it for writing. I tend to use it more with like on the financial data and stuff like that
Yeah,
because I
yeah.
think its ability to, yeah, enact um financial equations and
Oh well,
formulas,
for
etc. is
analysis and factual data,
yeah,
yeah. If you don't
and
want it
that's
operating
what
in
I.
a subjective
It's just a
writing
time
capacity.
saver, mate. It's just a
Yeah, yeah.
time saver, huge time saver. But I completely agree with you. When it's outbound communication or internal communication, it's got to be your authentic self because when you're more likely to come across those people or those individuals in your professional, personal lives, whatever. If you're not portraying your authentic self in that context, you're going to look like an absolute clown when you
Do.
then come across these people because you're like, well, hold on, you don't sound anything like what you talk
Mm,
like on email, for example. You sound like a
mm.
completely different individual. So you're
Definitely
not
on
building your
LinkedIn. I mean,
authentic self, are you?
99% of what I read on LinkedIn is you can tell someone they didn't even write the first draft of it themselves. They just like create a post on
Mm.
paper hygiene.
God knows what. Yeah,
And then
yeah,
it's just
yeah.
like factual nonsense, just like bleh. And
Yeah.
it's not very attractive to read it whatsoever. People don't read it.
Mm.
You're better off. Most of my content I don't put it through AI at all. I just put it with warts and
Mm.
all. And my
Mm.
grammar's crap. It's warts
Mm.
and all. This is,
But it's you though, isn't it? It's
but
you.
that's
Mm.
it. Sometimes I prefer to use it to analyze the writing to go, how can I get this point across better? How could
Mm.
I get that point across better rather than, can you rewrite the whole thing for me? It just doesn't
Yeah.
work that well.
No, I
But
agree, mate.
with one thing I thought would be cool to talk about was just leadership in general as well.
Mm.
Because you built that team, obviously you were on your own at WEPA and then you built it over a few years. But when it comes to leadership, what are some of the lessons or principles you lean on from
Yeah,
those?
I mean, I kind of like I have one or two real sort of, yeah, kind of not formal structures, but they're very much sort of ingrained in me how I just naturally prefer to lead. So one of the key things for me is autonomy with accountability. I believe that as a leader, you need to give your guys or ladies a framework to work within, of course, and you need to give them kind of like a north star of what you're wanting to achieve, whether it's as a team or whatever. But inside of that, I tend to try and allow them as much autonomy as possible. So what I mean by that is if they choose that they want to be, I don't know, as an example, out on the road 20 times a week, fine. If they want to be out on the road twice a week, fine. As long as they meet their objectives, then that's fine by me, because I believe that by giving people autonomy, you're allowing them to operate in the way they would most prefer to operate, which again, in my opinion, gives you the greatest potential outcome for success. Now, don't get me wrong, there is also the flip side of that. So there is a risk element in that type of leadership. And I think then the accountability piece is critical. So that's why I have sort of autonomy with accountability. And I think also when you have given people the autonomy to operate within reason, how they'd like to, and let's say sadly they fell short for whatever particular reason, I think your ability to hold them accountable is far, far higher, because you can say to them, well, look, let's be honest, you had a pretty much carte blanche way of doing your tasks. You were given the autonomy to do it how you felt that you wanted to. And for whatever reason, you then have failed. And I just find then it's a lot easier to hold them accountable, because you can say, well, look, under perfect circumstances, inverted commas, you have not reached the required standard. Do you need something different? Do we need to try something different? And it gives you then the ability to then look at alternate methods. I think if you just sometimes go in with a hard and fast, you're going to do this and this is it, and you can't do it, and you just do as you're told. There's two types of people. Some people will just knuckle down and do it, and maybe I don't know, maybe I don't know, maybe you lose that sort of real drive from them. They just become a little bit robotic. I'm not sure. Or secondly, you get the type of people that just rebel against it and go, oh Christ, I don't want to do that. Why is he literally just spoon feeding me, micromanaging me? Like I'm going to rebel and I'll become alienated, etc. So what I find is, by the method I use, and I could be wrong, but I think the French phrase is like laissez-faire or something like that. It's a much more sort of relaxed style of leadership. But I found personally, and I think it's also it's reliant on you as a leader to also create the right culture, but B, create the right team. Now, not everyone is going to work within that team. Not everyone is going to go, that's how I want to operate. I'd rather have much more structure, or I'd rather be told exactly what to do. Fine, no problem at all. But how I've built teams historically is with those factors in mind. And when I then have interviewed, I've thought, well, who would fit within that type of culture or that type of leadership, but not just fit, excel. Because that's what you want at the end of the day. You know better than anyone, the costs of rehiring or the costs of recruitment are astronomical if you get it wrong, or retraining or redevelopment, whatever. So I think it's important as a leader, you define your style of leadership. So you define what works for you, and you might not work that. You might not. It took me years to work out what works for me. Like when I first started, I had different ways of doing things, and yeah, the reality is it probably didn't work. But I've kind of settled on this way, and I enjoy it, and it works for me. Um, and then once you've done that, you have to define quite a clear culture. So what is your culture, and what do you expect from people, and also how do you expect, or what do you expect for them to achieve? I think that's also important. You've got to be really, really transparent with them. And then thirdly, it's then once you've built that, you've then got to find the right people. So if you're recruiting, so you're building, you've got to then go and find your salespeople or your customers or whoever it may be. And you've got to find people, and you need to, I guess, in some ways, kind of like, well, obviously it's an interview process, but you kind of have to like test them, and then you'll be able. Your skill then is, excuse me, your skill then is to say, right, I've given them this criteria, they've behaved in X, Y, and Z way. Are they a cultural fit? Will they work for us, etc., etc.? And then it's the skill then is in the leader to then select the right individuals for that business, because all businesses are different, all business cultures are different, all business environments are different, all leadership styles are different. And one thing I would say is I do things this way, but you might do things differently, and someone else might do things completely differently. And not everyone is going to want to work under my style or your style or someone else's style. And I think it's, I think what's important though is to have it clear and obvious what that culture is and what that style is, and then you make that quite in the early stages of, say, the recruitment process. You make it quite well known. That's how you tend to do things, and then the individuals then have the opportunity to sort of go through the process if they want to continue, or they could just go, no, this isn't for me. That style's not for me. I need more man management, or I need more hand holding, whatever, and then you can just go from there. So
Mhm.
yeah, that's how I do things. Kind of suits my personality, to be honest. I'm quite relaxed, well, pretty much horizontal most of the time. So that kind of works for me. And I think as well, what it does is a lot of people, the autonomy is like, I see it before. I see it on, like, say, your sales ads or sales ads, sorry, your sales roles that you're advertising and stuff, where people want autonomy. Not everyone does, but I'd say the majority more do than more don't. And I think if you can, you give them a role that is, yeah, don't get me wrong, it's defined by overall goals, and then they've got their own KPIs, and of course you can't have it completely autonomous, so they can do what the hell they want. Of course you can't have that, but you've got
Mm.
some defined structure in it, and then I don't know, maybe there's 60% of it or 50% of it that they can do. They can reach those goals in their own way.
Mm.
I'm a big believer that will hopefully lead to them achieving those goals for themselves, because that's important. B, for the company, obviously important. But C, it's rewarding, and I think that's the key word, rewarding for them. You want to make I think it's important to make like a culture and an environment where people want to come to work. I personally enjoy getting up, going to work. Obviously, I assume you're the same, but there are lots and lots of people, unfortunately, who don't. They just go for the paycheck, or they go because they have to, or that is just the nature of the beast, or the cards they've been dealt. So, I think as a leader, you have a responsibility to define a culture and create a workplace, an environment that's, yeah, proactive and positive, and et cetera, et cetera. But it's not for everyone, and it is for some, and it isn't for others. But part of your responsibility is to define who you think would want to do it, and then test them. Do they actually want to do it? So
Mhm.
it's, yeah, kind of that's how I do things.
Yeah, the autonomy, you're spot on with what you say. Probably the number one thing I hear from salespeople is the autonomy piece.
Mm,
Why are you leaving where you're leaving at the moment? I'm being
mm,
micromanaged. I don't get autonomy.
mm,
I hear it all the time.
mm,
And I think if you speak to enough people over a long enough time, people generally want the same things. People want
mm,
freedom. They want control over their life.
mm.
Like you say, you want to be rewarded fairly for what they
Yeah,
do.
definitely.
They want their family to be safe. Like, people want the
Yeah,
same
yeah, yeah, yeah. Of course they do.
things,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, absolutely.
And freedom and control is two big ones.
Mm,
Especially if you're working for a big, very corporate company and you've got no control over anything,
mm,
and you've also got no freedom, and then you've also got no way you can impact it either, because it's just, yeah, it's huge, and it doesn't matter whether you're
mm.
there or not. I don't think that's natural for people. I don't think
No, I'd
it's
agree.
natural for a human being to be in that environment.
Mm.
It's we're used to being in small tribes where you have
Yeah, absolutely.
impact and you have control over
Mm.
your life to a degree. Oh, I don't know why
Yeah,
my
absolutely.
thumb just came up there. See that? I gave you a thumbs down by accident.
No, it's fine, mate. It's fine.
But with the autonomy piece is interesting because I've recruited a lot of salespeople who say they want autonomy, and then when they're in it,
They don't want it.
they don't want it because what
Mm.
you said before, it's the accountability. If
Yeah,
you
it
want
is.
that, you have to earn it, don't you? You don't just have it. Like
Mm.
if you're not doing what you say you're going to do,
It's like
come
it's
back.
like a great example is if you look at like in football, if you give a player a free role and you could say, right, you got a free role,
Mm,
that's autonomy. You can go and play exactly how you want. You can track back if you want to. You can go forward if you want. Whatever. What if they then perform on the pitch really poorly?
mm,
The only person to blame is themselves.
mm,
Like you were given a free role to define that role exactly how you wanted. You agreed
mm,
that's what you wanted,
mhm,
and then for whatever reason you've not done that,
mhm.
then it's so much easier to hold them accountable.
Totally.
If
Yeah.
you've if
Yeah.
you've hamstrung them with a loads of constraints and specific criteria on how they have to do X, Y, and Z and they fail, it's a lot more difficult to hold them accountable because it might not be their style. It might not be bring the best out of them. It might be
Mm,
demoralizing or demotivating the
mm,
compounds that you've put them within.
mm,
So I think from an ethical perspective, y- in my opinion, you're giving people the best opportunity to succeed. I'm not saying they're gonna succeed.
mm,
I'm not guaranteeing success by this method, but at least you're giving them, in my opinion, the best opportunity to succeed if, and it's a big if, they're happy within that type of culture. Because I think it's cultural identity that matters the most. And I
mm,
think
mm,
you've got to as well, you've got to create a culture of success and then find people regardless of what walk of life or whatever they come from. And then that's the hardest part, to go and find people to fit that culture because like you said,
mm.
everyone's different.
And also, most of the time, there's either a not a defined culture.
Exactly, yeah.
Oh, thumbs up again.
I think it's because I think it's your finger. It's picking up your
I'm
finger.
very thumbs, aren't I?
Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah. And it's
proper
obviously
thumbs.
picking it up. Yeah, yeah.
One, there's no defined culture,
Mm,
or, and I've had a lot of these ones, especially from owner-managed businesses, where they think or have a vision of what they want their culture to be, but the reality
mm.
of the thing is very different,
Yeah, yeah. I'd
and
agree.
they don't either they don't know, or people are not telling them, or
Mm.
they don't want to portray their business as not having that
It's an
culture.
investment though, mate. It's an investment at the end of the day. You've got to invest in changing a culture or creating a culture. You can't just say this is our culture and then expect it to happen. You've got to
Mhm.
invest in practices. You've got to invest in processes. You've got to
Totally.
create defined workflows, etc., or create frameworks of workflows, etc., and
Mm.
then really clear objectives and KPIs for people, and then say, right, okay, you go and do it.
Yeah.
It's not as simplified as that. Of course, it's not. But what I'm
Yeah.
saying is, you can't just hope to have a culture and
No,
expect it to
you got
happen.
to
You've got to
create
create
it.
it. Yeah,
Yeah,
of
yeah.
course you do.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's the same for everything
It's the
else,
same in
right?
sport. It's the same.
Yeah.
Look at sport. All the successful sporting teams, regardless of what sport it is, have all got a culture, and the players have bought into that culture. And like you look at the women's rugby team's a great example. England women's rugby team, like they're so successful. I can't remember how many games they've won or without losing, but that's an environment and a culture that is just crazily, crazily successful.
Mm.
And that's come from the fact that every individual, every lady that enters that team buys into what the others have created, and they go, right, I'm gonna work hard because I want to be a part of this. And
Mm.
if you get the culture right, and they're a brilliant example of a really positive,
Mm.
successful culture, and how, um, yeah, I'd imagine most women that are playing the sport of rugby probably want to be part of that
Mm.
if they're good enough to get into it. So yeah, I
You
think
have it on a
it's
personal level too, don't you? If you
yeah,
think about
definitely,
confidence, for
yeah,
example, you can't. Of course, you've got delusional, arrogant people who are out
yeah,
there.
of
Of course, they
course,
exist, but confidence doesn't come from you just saying that you have confidence.
no.
Confidence comes from um,
Proof's in the
Cor
pudding. Like
yeah,
you
it
get
comes
the
from
results,
undeniable
the
proof,
data,
things that
the
you've done.
data,
Here's the
mate.
data, yeah.
Yeah,
You go and
yeah,
achieve, go back to, a striker who's got no confidence because they haven't scored in a long time. But if you've got a striker who's scoring every game, they've got that undeniable
yeah. Agreed.
proof, don't they, that they've got that confidence. But yeah,
Agreed.
the culture piece is the culture piece. At this point, when I hire for companies, I don't really talk about culture with them that
Mm,
much, which I probably should, but I don't. And the reason I don't is because they'll tell me
Mm.
what they think their culture should be.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But until I've had someone work in that business, I
You
don't know
don't
if
know.
that's true.
Well, that's why
So,
places like Glassdoor website exist and things like that, don't they?
yeah, they do
Yeah.
exist.
Mm.
And up until that point, when candidates ask me, like, do the same thing with management style. What's the management style of Ali? Obviously, I know you, and I've had
Yeah,
guys
yeah,
work
yeah,
with
yeah.
you, so I
Yeah.
can tell. Obviously, we had this conversation here today, but
Yeah.
if you're a new line manager that I'm working with, I just say I don't know,
Mm.
because I've never had anyone work with them before.
Exactly.
So until that point, there's no point saying. And everyone will always say, "I'm a this, I'm a that, I'm a whatever."
Yeah, of
Every
course.
manager's going to say that I'm a good manager, right? Um,
Mm.
but there's I can't possibly know that. And the same thing goes for the culture.
Mm.
Until I've had people work in a business, I can't really tell you what the culture
Mm.
has been. Because I've seen ones where they tell you, there's the typical corporate values and those
Mm.
things that
Mm.
they
Yeah,
give
yeah,
you.
yeah.
And then the way they act is completely in
Yeah, yeah,
parallel.
yeah, of
It's
course.
not,
Whereas
it's
it's forward facing and inward facing, isn't it? It's two different types. So
two different
internal and
types.
external cultures. So yeah.
Totally, totally, totally. So when, given your trading background and the FT and everything, when you're
Mm.
looking at the shit show that we're in at the moment, how
Yeah.
do you see our market from what you look at, and how do you
Yeah.
see the FT and
Well,
your background
it's
and everything?
yeah. I mean it's so much of our market is intrinsically linked to these external factors. So we're so reliant on gas, oil, and energy. Of course, we are for things like transport, obviously for transportation of goods around Europe to our market. That's a really obvious one. I think you look at the political situation across the world as well, and I think once you can kind of, like I said, if you spend 10 minutes reading, it doesn't take a genius to work out why we're in the situation we're in. It really doesn't. Like that, anyone can, a complete novice could read what's going on in the Middle East and then put two and two together and probably work out, oh, well, that's why we're seeing higher prices here. I think one of the things as well is post-COVID. I still think COVID and post-COVID is a really significant factor in our marketplace. So if you look at our market before COVID, I don't know any numbers or stats off the top of my head, but I would imagine that the number of people working in offices was far higher in 2018, for example, or 2016 compared to 2026. I'd imagine it was a far,
Probably in the high 90%. So I'd say
yeah, I would say it was a far higher number. I'd also imagine that the number of the total investment of companies into buildings and offices was again far higher 10 years ago to what it is now. So those two factors, plus obviously the furlough scheme, which also, in my opinion, had a significant impact on the job market because so many people were essentially out of work but paid to be out of work, and then a lot of those people found it very difficult to then get back into work for
Mm,
various different reasons. So that kind of
mm,
skewed the market as well. And I know we're talking back, 6 years ago, but that's still relatively short term in
mm,
the grand scheme of things. Like that, you
mm,
look at 08, 09, that was a big financial crisis for us. And that took us a long time afterwards to get over that. And if you look at where we are now in terms of market and our costs and our pricing compared to where we were in 2019, we're still way higher. Like I remember, for example, 2021, I think pricing on average went up, for most manufacturers across our industry by at least 50%, if
mm,
not near 70% or more. I'm only talking about our industry. I don't know about gloves and various other PPE and stuff. That I imagine that could have gone up by even more. I don't know. But though prices haven't come down since then by the same percentages,
mm,
they're not as high because we had a big then reduction back down in 22 and preceding years, but then it went back up again with things like the energy crisis and the hand towels and hand towels and the gas, sorry. So there's kind of been like a fluctuation of factors over the course of the last 5 years that have led to the prices going really high, coming down a bit, going back high again, coming down a bit, and now we're back up again to seeing them higher because of obviously everything that's going on in the Middle East. So yeah, I think the market is much more challenging than it ever has been. I would argue also that there's probably less viable end users than what there was maybe 8 to 10 years ago for the factors we discussed. So yeah, more people working from home. Like that's become ingrained in our culture now, hasn't it? I mean, I've always worked from home, so I've never known any different. But again, post-COVID, I don't know what the percentage of people now who work in a hybrid role or a remote role would be, but I would say it's way, way, way higher than what it was 10 years ago, like so much higher. And I think it's you probably know far better than me, but it's almost like a prerequisite now for candidates to have an element of their role that's hybrid or working from home. Whereas, yeah, like I said, historically, that would never even have been a thing. People wouldn't even have thought to ask that. So when you factor that in, then the actual consumers of our products have reduced, or the number of consumers have reduced. It's kind of led to a transition between consumption being less on professional and more on the consumer retail market, because obviously more people working from home would then buy their own products for their home, which would then fall under retail and consumer. So it's not like the market has completely dissipated. It's just spread from one to the other. It's kind of gone from, it's just what demand or whatever's moved across. I think people's reluctance to change has also affected buying habits. So what I mean by that is, during all of the crises we've talked about today, one of the key factors that any end user or any distributor would have said to you was, in my experience, they're more bothered about continuation of supply, regular supply, continuation of stock, etc., etc. If, yes, they had to pay a little bit extra to maintain that continuation of supply, they weren't bothered, because at the end of the day, they've still got to sell goods to turn over their own. They've got their own costs, etc., that they've got to meet, and their own turnover targets, etc. So I think all of those factors together has made this market completely different to what it was. I'd argue it's probably a little bit more difficult now to maybe sell into. I think you've got to time at KC, and I'm sure it's still the same with a lot of businesses. Like, KC always used to promote we're not going to focus on a road to zero, and the road to zero is where you've got two people competing for business, and one offers £10, the next one goes at £9.50, then the £9 £8.50. You get my drift. You're going to end up at zero if you keep going on undercutting each other. And I think there is obviously a substantial part of our market that is price driven. Of course there is. That's the commodity items. And then the other part of the market is the systems and the dispense items and things like that. And I think there where you've got a bit more going on, because if you can offer an alternate system that, talked about it earlier, like improves efficiencies, or improves cost in use, or reduces waste, or etc., companies can make savings financially in other ways rather than just price. So I think my kind of summary point on that is, the market in the UK I've always kind of viewed as like an iceberg, and obviously an iceberg is a big body of ice, and a lot of it is, the huge part of it sits under the water and you can't see it, or you're not quite sure where it is, or you're not quite sure what it's doing. Well, I kind of look at that as a commodity market. There's a huge commodity market, massive volume, lower price points, but we know where most of it is, but we can't always see where all of it is. I don't know personally where it all is. Of course I don't. And then as you go up the iceberg, the price increases and the quality increases till you get to the top, where you've got real high quality items at a high price point, but the desire and volume to purchase that is far smaller than it was at the commodity level. So I think, I would say that, I think the market is definitely challenging, but I think it puts the onus on more the manufacturer's ability to be innovative, to have good stories, and to like the old Ronseal saying, the proof's on, what does it say? What's something to do with it? I can never remember the saying.
What it says on the tin.
Exactly, that's it. I knew it was something like that. My brain wasn't working, but that you need products that do that now, because people probably are slightly more reluctant to change because of the reasons I mentioned. But if they are willing to look at alternatives, your product has literally got to do exactly what it says on the tin. And if it doesn't, your opportunity or window to potentially develop something with that end user or distributor might well have gone. So I think you're also probably, in my opinion, seeing a slight mindset shift in the salespeople. Don't get me wrong, you're always going to have your pure hunters that are bang, 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 just relentless. You're always going to need those guys, and you're always going to need them, and they're always going to be there. But I think when you go up through the different sort of, the different types of account managers and area managers, national accounts, etc., I think the guys that will potentially do well are the ones that have that ability to understand the market, like we've spoke about all day, and secondly, the ones that can offer that real point of difference when they're talking or selling or talking to potential consumers of the product. You've got to have a point of difference these days, or otherwise it can't be the same thing, because otherwise all you'll fall back on is just price, and then that's never a good place to get to, in my opinion.
Not the customers you want either a lot of the time.
No,
You know this,
no,
I know this, that the ones who only care about price and nothing more and want it for the cheapest end up being the ones that take up the most of your time. Uh,
exactly. And you can't guarantee any loyalty either.
no loyalty.
If they've moved to you because of price, they're probably gonna move away
Do the
from you because
same
of price.
elsewhere.
So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, so it's but don't get me wrong, they're a critical part of this industry. There's no, I'm not undervaluing them whatsoever. It's just you've got to understand, when you, as a manufacturer, where you want to position yourself, and
Mm,
what part of the market do you want to operate in, or do you want to operate across all aspects of it.
mhm.
So it's understanding, and then it's mitigating your risk to operate hopefully as successfully as you can across all the different parts of it. So
And what's in terms of what you see out there
yeah.
and your knowledge of the market, I mean, you've been in it for so long now, you're obviously very tuned into what's going into world
Mm,
events and such. What's the one thing in our market, cleaning hygiene, like catering supplies and food packaging, they're all
mm,
very similar, but
mm.
let's just say cleaning hygiene. What's the one thing that do you think is really important that no one's really talking about?
Crikey, mate. Now you've asked me. I think I wouldn't say it was something that people weren't talking about, but I would say it's really important. If I can talk about AI again,
Yeah, yeah.
I do think AI is really important. And like we've touched on already today, it's there's pros and cons of it. Of course there is, but I think if you can, if for anyone out there who's not using it already, I really would recommend just spending a little bit of time to try and understand it a bit better, and understand it, how it could actually help you. Because I think one thing you find, especially in sales, you get, I'm guilty of it, we all are, is being busy fools sometimes,
Mm,
and you're just running around like
mhm,
what do you call, hamsters in a wheel, sorry,
mhm,
and you can't always see the wood from the trees. And I think if AI can help you with, like I talked about, your formulas or your equations or your commercial propositions, etc., it's just saving you time. And it's obviously something that people are aware of, and a lot of businesses are now integrating it into and investing heavily in it. But I think as individuals, if we can find a way to use it that benefits us, and it's all above board, etc., I think it's something that can give you time back. And the more time you get back, sorry, in my opinion, it allows you more time to make better decisions on other things.
mhm.
So that would be something for me. I think in terms of like what's coming into that, or it's been in the market and is something that's kind of like a new initiative, there's obviously alternate fibers. That's a big thing. We've got things like bamboo now in the market. At WEPA we had PureSoft, which is corrugated cardboard, and we had Green Grow, which is a Mecanthus grass, which is like a bamboo equivalent, I guess is the best way to put it. So alternate fiber products that then allow both the manufacturer and the end user and distributor to meet obviously their CSR goals, etc. So I think development into that field is only going to continue over time. But generally speaking, we're hand towels and toilet tissue. Generally speaking, of course, we do sanitizers and soaps and various other things. But there's only so much innovation there can be on those types of products, as long as they're practical, they're good cost in use. There's only so much you can do to change them, if that makes sense. So I think alternate fibers is important, but it's still such a very small part of our market. Um, yeah, probably those two off the top of my head. Sorry, I haven't got anything too groundbreaking that I can think of for that question, to be honest.
That's all good, mate. I mean, I think your AI point is absolutely spot on, and I don't know. Well,
It's a
obviously,
confidence piece to use it. It's a confidence piece to be able to use it and
yeah, and
use
it's
it so it's used correctly. Yeah,
use it
definitely.
correctly. The way I like to really think about it for my business anyway is I don't use any of it forward facing to any customers or people.
No, 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 that's fine. I'm the same.
Everything
I'm the same.
it's great for internal,
Yeah, I'd agree. I'd
s-
agree.
to like you say, freeing up your time, saving you time.
Definitely, definitely.
Anything, there's so much you can do with it, and we're in process of changing it all the time. But as a salesperson, salesperson, same as you, is you're there. You want to be speaking with customers
Mm.
and solving those problems, right? You want to be
Yeah,
bogged down
definitely.
with admin and those types of things, and
Definitely.
that's the
Definitely.
part that it can do. What I see a lot is a lot of really bad outreach, really bad, you know, content, stuff that goes out to people using AI, and I don't think it does your business any favors at all.
But you could argue therefore that maybe those individuals that are doing that have probably A, not done the due diligence, B, they think they can cut a corner, and C, maybe yeah, maybe they just, I don't know, maybe they're just trying to cut corners is probably the only rationale I could put behind that.
Well, people, I think, if you're talking about from an outreach perspective, you're talking about sales and
Mm.
marketing, right? And a lot of it's going to be marketing. You know, that is an entire industry built off marketing and human psychology and everything.
I
It's not something you can just do for
Mm.
30
No,
seconds
no,
and
no.
be good at
I
it.
think
It doesn't work that way.
100%. And I also think, like, my kind of final point on the AI topic would be people that use it regularly, like me or you or whoever, we can read it as well. So if we see something that is created, generally speaking, not, oh, Christ, we're not psychic, but generally speaking, you can see
You
if
can
it's
see
been
it.
written with AI or it's got an AI twang to it. You can tend to spot it and
We're very good.
identify it.
Pattern recognition in humans is
Exactly. Yeah,
incredibly good. We
exactly.
don't even know how good we are at it. You
No.
just know when something's
Yeah, you just
right.
get a feeling, don't you?
You see it. You see it
Yeah,
in the biggest giveaway is how it structures a paragraph.
exactly.
You
Yeah,
can see it a mile off.
it's just coding. It's
It's just
constant. It's
yeah.
like a coding system. Yeah,
And as soon as you see that structure, you don't even read the first word
yeah,
or let alone the first line.
yeah, yeah.
I can see the structure, onto the next one. See the structure
And
onto
it's the
the
words. I look for words. Like
Mm,
there's certain words in my grammar that I would use that you might not use, and also there's certain words in your grammar that I might not use. And
mm,
the way you choose your grammar and your semantics, etc., is all the way you choose to speak or write is you.
mm,
And the way I choose to do it is me. So if I drastically change how I talk or write and you do the same, it stands out like a sore thumb that one of us isn't being our authentic self. So I think, like to sort of finalize your point, definitely I would, if you're dipping your toe for the first time, internal only, don't worry about the external parts. But
mm.
mate, I'm very conscious. I've got to shoot in 2 minutes, I'm afraid, to get
No
my
worries, my
children
friend.
from
No worries, my
school.
friend. Oh yeah, it
So
took up more time. Oh yeah, bloody 3 p.m. already.
yeah, I've got to go
Ali,
in like 1 minute. So
it's been great having you on.
no, good
Anyone
mate. Yeah,
listening,
great fun.
this man is looking for a new role after years and years of being a VEPA, sales director, head of sales. Hire this man. He's immediately available and single. So, but Ali, I
Thanks, mate.
appreciate you being on, my friend. It's great to have you here.
No problem, mate. Thanks very much. Cheers.
Cheers, mate.
Thanks, mate.